Skyhook by Jill Lewis continued. We are at chapter 13. This is definitely now new content for both Anning and Newton. We're moving on to parts that we have not before heard. So this is where it gets even more exciting. I returned Rob's bike the next morning. "A cleaned bike," I said. Rob was down in the village with Ewan and some boys from school. They were kicking a ball about on the rough, stony ground below the play park. Rob glanced down at his bike. "It's not just some cheap bike, that. Dad nearly killed me when I didn't come home with it last night. I know, I am sorry." "What did she want, anyway?" asked Rob. "Who, Iona?" I shrugged my shoulders. "It was nothing. We waited for ages, but you never came back," said Rob. "Where did you go? What were you doing?" "It wasn't anything," I said irritably. "Just drop it, okay?" "Hey, Callum," shouted Ewan. "We need a goalie. Are you playing?" Ewan kicked the ball to me, but I let it roll past and into a ditch. "Or maybe you want to get back to your girlfriend," said Rob. I grabbed him by his coat. "Shut up, Rob," I yelled. Our faces were inches apart. "She's a nutter," said Rob. "You said so yourself." Something inside me snapped. I punched him, right in the face. Rob scrambled up and launched at me. We sprawled over his bike, punching and kicking. I felt the crack of his bike computer splitting open beneath my back. Then Ewan was there, pulling Rob away before the other boys could crowd around us. "Go, Callum," Ewan said. He held Rob by the arm. "Just go." Rob and I glared at each other. I couldn't tell if it was hurt or hate in his eyes, but I didn't care. I turned and walked up the road out of the village, and I didn't look back. When I reached the lock, Dad's Land Rover was parked on the far shore near the tree house. Iona was sitting on the bonnet, drinking from a steaming mug. A thick moustache of hot chocolate sat upon her top lip. "What have you done to your face?" she said. I wiped my sleeve along my mouth. It left a trail of blood, mud, and saliva." "Nothing," I said. She passed me a paper tissue and I tried to clean most of it off. There was hammering and banging from the branches above. "Your dad thought our tree could do with a bit of improvement," said Iona. "You told him about it?" I said. "Yeah, well, he knows about the ospreys," she said, "so it makes no difference." I could just see Dad's feet through the leaves. I thought at first the hammering might scare the ospreys, but when I looked across to the island I could just see the head of Iris poking up from the nest, watching us. "The ospreys think your dad's a strange big bird," Iona said. "Have you seen what he's doing up there?" I climbed up Dad's ladder into the tree. Wooden planks of all shapes and sizes were balanced in the branches. Graham and Hamish were up in the tree too. They'd built a wide platform support and were now building up the sides of the treehouse. "What do you think, Callum?" said Dad. "It's really great," I said, looking around. I was amazed. It really was. Dad, Hamish and Graham had built it around the main trunk. I could already see it was going to be huge. I could live up here. "Well, that's the general idea, Cal," said Graham. "It's Mum and Dad's way of getting rid of you." I grinned at him. I didn't care if he was joking. He was just putting the hinges on the trapdoor in the base of the treehouse. "Thanks, Graham," I said, and I really meant it. We stopped work for lunch. Dad drove us back to the farmhouse in the Land Rover, all squashed together along the front seat. A fine rain misted the windscreen and hid the hills from view. Iona stretched her bare feet on the dashboard and warmed her toes in the hot air from the vents. "Come on in," said Mum. "You're all soaked, the lot of you." We all piled into the kitchen, our damp clothes steaming in the warm air. "You'll stay for lunch, Hamish, won't you?" said Mum. "And what about Iona? Will you stay, Iona?" Iona nodded. "Yes, please, Mrs. McGregor." "Shall I ring your Grandad?" said Mum. "I will," said Iona. She took the phone out into the hall. Mum turned to me. "That's a fair nasty cut on your lip, Callum," she said. I put my fingers to the split lip where Rob had punched me. It felt swollen and sore. I just fell off my bike, I said. I looked at her, and she could tell that I was lying. Go and clean yourself up, she said, and wash your hands. As I went to the bathroom, I found Iona on the stairs with the phone in her hands. You've not rung him, have you? I said. Shh, don't tell your mum. Please don't tell your mum. Won't he wonder where you are? I said. No. She shook her head and frowned. He forgets things, does Grandad. Anyway, he's probably just asleep. For lunch, Mum gave us roast lamb, roast potatoes, carrots and peas, with thick brown gravy. I thought I had a good appetite, but Iona had seconds of everything, and then thirds. She even managed a huge bowl of Mum's best treacle pudding and custard. Hamish flopped down in the saggy sofa by the cooking range. He closed his eyes and folded his hands on his stomach. That was so good, he groaned. I won't be able to move for a week. Aye, well, there's not much point going anywhere, said Dad. The rain's set to stay. I looked out across the yard. Even the barn was hidden by a thick curtain of rain. Gusts of wind smattered the raindrops against the window. Not even the thought of going to see the ospreys was enough to make me want to go outside. Iona and I packed the dishwasher, while Mum cleared the table. I wish I lived on a farm, said Iona. My granddad had a farm, didn't he? That's right, said Mum. Your granddad and Callum's granddad knew each other rather well. Iona's eyes widened. Did they? Mum nodded. They were friends and rivals. They both bred Scottish black-faced sheep and showed them at all the big shows. I didn't know that, I said. Mum hung the wet tea towels to dry. I've got a box of Grandad's old photos up in the attic, she said. I'll see if I can find them. Iona and I sat at the kitchen table with our backs to the radiator and waited for her while she searched the attic. Here they are, Mum said. She put an old cardboard box on the table. It smelt musty, of mice and mothballs. No one's looked at these for years. Mum pulled out big brown envelopes and looked inside. There you go, she said with a big smile. That's the two of them, side by side. It was a black and white photo of an agricultural show, dated 1962. There was a line of farmers holding sheep, waiting to be judged. Didn't they look young, said Mum. That's your Grandad there. Iona stared into the photo. He looks really happy there, doesn't he? Mum smiled. Yeah, you can keep it if you like. Iona and I looked through more photos. There were lots of the farm and people in strange old-fashioned clothes. Even Mum didn't know who some of them were. I looked across at Iona. She was holding a photo in her hand. I could tell it was really old. It was brown and faded. I couldn't get a clear view, but Iona's eyes were shining like I'd never seen them shine before. You're not going to believe this, Callum, she said, holding up the photo. You're really not. Chapter 14. Amazing, said Dad. I never knew about this. Incredible, said Hamish. I peered over Iona's shoulder at the faded photo in her hand. It was a photo of a loch. It was our loch, but it was dated 1905. There was a rocky island and a cluster of trees, not just pines, but small wind-bent trees and bushes too. But there, unmistakably on the tallest pine, was a huge tangle of sticks. It was so obviously an eyrie, much bigger than the one Iris and her mate had built. I can't believe we've had ospreys on this farm before, said Dad. Over 100 years ago. That must have been about the last, said Hamish. There were no recorded nests at all in Scotland between about 1910 and the early 1950s. Mum shook her head. I don't know how people can shoot them or steal their eggs. For private collections and for money, sadly, said Hamish. Some people would do it today if given half a chance. Some people poison them because they think they take too many fish. That's just not fair, said Dad. We've got to keep our nest a secret, said Iona. All of us. You're right there, said Hamish. Letting people see ospreys at protected reserves is important, but the only way to build up osprey numbers is at nests like this one. Nests kept secret and hidden away. Well, I think Grandad would be well pleased with you, Iona, said Graham with a grin. We'll make you an honorary member of the farm. You'd have thought Graham had given her a slice of the sun by the way Iona smiled back. Talking of Grandad, said Mum, I think your Grandad will be worrying where you are. I'll give you a lift home, said Hamish. I ought to go. Mum packed Iona off with some thick socks and a fleece jacket I'd grown out of. She wrapped up half a fruitcake too. When Iona said no, Mum said it was too much for Dad to eat, said that he was fat enough already. Dad winked at Iona. Not very good at winking. Dad winked at Iona and patted his belly, and Iona laughed. It didn't stop raining that day. After Iona had gone, I went to my bedroom and rummaged under my bed for an old scrapbook. I was given it a few years ago, but I'd only put a few monster cards I'd collected in it. I stripped them out and wrote in big letters, "The Ospreys on our farm." Maybe I could keep a record of them for other people in 100 years' time. And then I wrote in smaller letters, "The Diary of Iris." I logged onto my computer and typed in the code Hamish had given us for Iris. It was amazing. On Google Earth, it put her position exactly on the island on the lock. 5 GMT. Hamish said GMT was Greenwich Mean Time, London time. I looked out of the window and shivered. I knew Iris would be sitting on her eggs. There was no shelter for her there. I wanted to write her position, her coordinates in the scrapbook, but something stopped me. I just couldn't do it. It was as if writing it would... It was as if writing it would somehow give away our secret. So I stuck in some photos that Hamish had given me and just wrote 5 GMT, nest site, secret location, Scotland. I lay back on my bed and listened to the rain. I closed my eyes and tried to imagine myself high on the eyrie. I tried to imagine the raindrops sliding across my oiled feathers and the sway of the eyrie in the wind coming down from the rain-hammered mountains.